Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're diving into something totally fascinating. We're looking at a system that works so seamlessly, we usually just take it completely for granted. We're going to explore your body's digestive system. But actually, scratch that. We aren't just going to look at it as a collection of organs. Instead, we're going to treat it like a highly coordinated, incredibly efficient biological factory.
Just think about this for a sec. How does your gut actually know exactly what to do when you eat? You chew, you swallow, and then what? Digestion is honestly a massive logistical problem. Your body has to figure out how to break down proteins, fats, and carbs, extract the exact nutrients it needs, and move all the rest along, all without you even having to consciously think about it. And it solves this problem flawlessly, multiple times a day.
All right, let's dive right in. To understand how this biological factory runs without a hitch, we really need to understand its management team. And in your gut, those managers are hormones. In the context of our whole factory analogy, a hormone is basically a chemical messenger. It acts just like a floor manager, sending these urgent memos to different departments, like your stomach, your pancreas, or your liver, telling them to release the right chemical juices at the exact right time. Without these managers, the factory floor would literally be in total chaos. By the way, the core info we're breaking down today comes straight from a brilliant lecture by Dr. Pooja Yadav, and understanding these 8 managers is absolutely vital if you're gearing up for competitive biology exams.
Okay, Section 1. Intro to Gut Hormones.
To really make sense of all these managers, we first need to mentally map out the physical journey a meal takes down your GI tract. We start up in the stomach, move down into the duodenum, which is the very first section of the small intestine, and then follow it through the rest of the wider small intestine. We're going to follow our 8 hormones like they're relay runners, passing the baton from one department to the exact next one as your food gets digested.
Moving right along to Section 2, starting in the stomach.
The absolute second food hits your stomach, the very first manager steps onto the factory floor. And this manager is a hormone called gastrin. Gastrin is the initiator. It's the one that kicks off the entire digestive sequence.
So where does it come from? Gastrin is actually secreted by the mucosal wall of the pyloric stomach, specifically by the Argentophan cells. Once it's secreted, its main job is to induce the secretion of gastric juice by the gastric glands. So the crucial takeaway here is that gastrin is the vital spark. It turns on the gastric juice taps, flooding the stomach with the chemicals you need to start breaking down your food.
Next up, Section 3. The duodenum's chemical shift. So, once the stomach does its initial job, the partially digested food, which we now call chyme, moves right into the duodenum. Here, the mucosal lining acts like a massive command center. It secretes 3 separate hormones that act as managers, and they start commanding outside organs, specifically your pancreas, your liver, and your gallbladder. First up, we've got secretin, which triggers the release of sodium bicarbonate from the pancreas and bile from the liver. Second, pancreozymin induces the secretion of all those heavy-lifting pancreatic enzymes. We're talking pancreatic amylase, lipase, and peptidases. And third is cholecystocanin, or hey, let's just call it CCK for short. CCK stimulates bile secretion and explicitly tells the gallbladder to contract, squeezing its stored bile out and right into the digestive tract.
Now, what's really interesting here, and honestly super easy to confuse on an exam, are 2 hormones that sound almost identical but do completely different things. We have duocrinin and enterocrinin. Duocrinin stimulates Brunner's gland to secrete mucus, and that mucus protects the intestinal lining. On the flip side, enterocrinin stimulates the crypts of Leberkuhn, which are your intestinal glands, to secrete the actual intestinal digestive juice. It's a perfect division of labor, right? Duocrinin gets the protective mucus flowing, while enterocrinin brings in the active digestive juices.
Okay, Section 4, small intestine absorption.
Let's zoom out and look at the wider small intestine. This whole tract, encompassing the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum, is where the real magic of nutrient extraction actually happens. Enter our next manager, villikinin. Unlike some of those other hormones we just talked about that are isolated to the duodenum, villikinin is secreted by the mucosal lining of the entire small intestine. Its specific job is to physically stimulate the villi. You know, those tiny finger-like projections lining your gut. By making the villi move, villikinin maximizes the surface area for absorption. It makes sure your body can soak up absolutely every possible digested food nutrient it needs to survive.
Which brings us to Section 5, the critical feedback loop.
You know, any well-designed factory needs a reliable way to just shut the machines down when the job is done. So far, we've been looking at the accelerators,
These are 7 stimulatory hormones that actively turn on digestive juices, mucus, and organ contractions. But on the exact opposite side, we have the brakes. Dr. Yadav highlights one distinct inhibitory hormone we absolutely need to know about, and that's enterogastrone.
This is where things get really critical. Enterogastrone is released the second that chyme touches the mucosal walls of the duodenum. It immediately sends an inhibitory signal back up to the gastric glands to just stop the secretion of gastrin and halt any extra gastric juice. And why does this matter? Well, gastric juice contains incredibly powerful peptidases. If your stomach is empty but still pumping out these strong juices, they can literally induce stomach ulcers. This brilliant feedback mechanism, driven entirely by enterogastrone, literally stops your stomach from digesting its own walls. How wild is that?
Finally, Section 6, the ultimate exam cheat sheet.
Man, we have covered a lot of ground today, tracking food all the way through the system. So let's pull all of this together into the ultimate biological cheat sheet. We've got a perfectly structured map of the body's digestive managers. You have gastrin, starting things off in the stomach. Then we hit the duodenum, which releases secretin, pancreazymin, and CCK to manage the pancreas and liver. Then we've got deuterinin for mucus, enterocrinin for intestinal juice, and villikinin maximizing absorption across the whole small intestine. And finally, sitting at the bottom, our brake pedal, enterogastrone. If you're really wanting to lock this system down for an exam, I highly encourage you to memorize this clean mapping. It is a game changer. So, after breaking all of this down, I've got to ask, next time you sit down to eat a meal, are you going to think about those 8 microscopic managers running your internal factory? It's pretty incredible to realize that this immense coordinated effort happens inside you every single day. I really hope this explainer brought some clarity to the sheer intelligence of your gut. Thanks so much for joining me, and as always, keep learning.